Well, today, to say I'm excited is actually putting a little bit of cold water on it. I'm so thrilled for our next guest to share his story with you. Today, we have the infamous Mr. Will Buxton. He's an award-winning sports broadcaster, writer, voiceover artist, and commentator. You might best know him lately for the wildly popular Netflix F1 Drive to Survive series that follows the Formula One circuit and its drivers throughout the season. So welcome, Will.
Hello, lovely to see you again. It's been a while.
It's been a while. It's been a while. Last time I saw you was, I believe, in Brazil at the Brazil
Yep.
Grand Prix. And I have all kinds of questions to ask you, but how was that race for you? Did you enjoy yourself?
Do you know what? It feels like an age since I was in Brazil. It feels like such a long time. And since, you could just bump into people in hotels that were traveling, and it feels like a lifetime ago. So long ago, I can't even remember what happened in that race.
Ferrari had a mix-up in that race. Ferrari
I
had
mean,
a little tete-a-tete in that race.
that could be any one of the races over the last 18 months.
Not when they took each other out. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Interestingly enough, we'll get into this in a few minutes. So I'm going to save a question for you about that race. But I would love to share with the viewers, when you and I first met, we met in Monaco at the Monaco Grand Prix. And over dinner with a group of people, I asked you to share a little bit about your story. And once you started talking, I was saying, all right, I love this guy. I want to hear more of his story because you're so humble, you're authentic, and you were very forthcoming with, look, here's the flaws, here's my story, and I was just lucky enough to be here and there. So can you please, let's kind of take you through and weave that story together. Can I take you back to when you were 13? Because I really want you to set the stage for when did you first know that you had a fascination with Formula One, and how did it feel? How did it really feel to a young boy to go see your first Formula One race?
Wow. I remember the first time I experienced motor racing, and I think I was either 3 or 4 years old, and my parents took me to a hill climb, it's not a race as you know it on a closed circuit. It's literally bottom of the hill to the top of a hill, and who can get up there the quickest. And I remember it because I fell over a tent peg, one of those bird edges, those big metal tent pegs. And I fell over it and it gashed my shin, and I still have the scar. So you could say that motorsport physically affected me from the first time I saw it. It's been a part of me since then. And actually it was crazy. After my father died 5 years ago, we were going through a whole load of stuff at my mum's house, and I found a book from when I'd been 3 or 4 of drawings and things I'd done, and it had this what I did on my weekend, and one of the pages was that day.
Really?
And I'd drawn a little racing car, and that was the first day I ever saw a racing car. And I just fell in love with the noise and the color and the smell. And through that, the only motor racing that I remember as a kid being on television was the Grand Prix, which would take place every Sunday. My family was big on Sunday lunches, traditional British roast dinners every Sunday, and we would always have one. Mum would always cook, and then Dad and I would just sit in front of the TV and watch the Grand Prix after we'd had lunch. And it just became a sort of a family thing. My dad was never that into it until I really fell in love with it, and that brought him into it as well. And I think I was either 14 or 15 the first time I went to a British Grand Prix. We couldn't afford to go to the actual race. We just went to one of the practice sessions. But I'd already fallen in love with it by that time, and I already knew what I wanted to do with my life by that time, because, as you said, it was when I was 13. I loved this sport. All of my friends loved soccer because they were playing soccer in the schoolyard and all of that. But I loved Formula One, and my great hero was Ayrton Senna, and he was killed when I was 13. And that week, my dad bought me my first copy of Autosport magazine, which I guess is a little bit like Road and Track or something like that, stateside, and or Racer magazine, something like that. And in there, the words of the journalists who were trying to comprehend the enormity of what had happened with this great sort of idol of the sport who appeared almost immortal. the fact that he was fallible, the fact that he was mortal, them piecing it together in their own minds and writing about it helped me as a 13-year-old come to terms with it as well. And that was the day I knew what I wanted to do with my life, which was to make that nerdy, geeky 13-year-old who loved this thing that his mates didn't really understand, make him feel accepted and a part of something as well, or her. And that's why at 13 I said, right, I want to write about Formula One. That's all I want to do.
It's amazing because you've been laser focused since a young age. Nothing, did you ever say, okay, I'm going to give this up and make a passion, a hobby, a side hustle? I'm not going to make it my real thing. Or did you just say, nope, this is it, not stopping?
Well, my dad was in the army, and there was always a part of me that wanted to go and do that because I idolized my dad, and I didn't tell him often enough that I did. We argued too much as a teenager, as you do, because you think you know everything and your parents know nothing. But I totally idolized him, and I really looked up to him, and part of me, I think, wanted to be in the army because I thought that would make him proud. Ultimately, it wasn't at all what would have made him proud, and he would have been horrified and just wanted me to follow my own path. My folks said, get a proper degree, go to university, get a degree. So you've got a fallback in case this dream doesn't work out. You've got something to fall back on. So I did one of the humanities subjects. I did politics. I was an argumentative kid. So, if the journalism thing hadn't worked out, I think I would have become a politician and just argued with people for a living.
Perfect. Well, so that's great. So I remember that you once said that someone had told you, don't go to journalism school.
Yes.
You'll come out like cookie cutter like everyone else. And you took a little bit different path. And I think that has helped you tremendously along the way. Do you agree?
In one way, yes. And in another way, no. I wish I had studied the basics of journalism. I wish I had studied something which is a part of journalism degrees, which is media law, which obviously helps you in terms of libel and, not writing something that can get you in trouble. So I wish I'd studied that side of it. I studied politics because it taught me to research, taught me to form my own arguments, taught me to find my own voice, which is basically what you need for journalism. And as you say, not become a cookie cutter journalist that writes and thinks as everyone else on that course. But I think some of the more useful elements of that course, while not necessarily being around the freedom to form your own voice, certainly the more rudimental parts of journalism and the legalities of journalism, I think would have been a tremendous help. And I know that journalism courses and media courses now are far more wide-reaching than they were when I was at university. So yeah, I did politics. I wrote my thesis on the politics of Formula One, which my lecturers hated and tried to fail me. I scraped through literally by the skin of my teeth, but I sent the thesis that I'd written on the politics of Formula One to the folks at F1 magazine and left university working in a bar. And one day I get a phone call. Hey, Will, would you like to come in and help us put together the end of season annual? We read your thesis. We love it. We love the way you write. Think you've got something. Do you want to come in? And I did. And on the last day of those 2 weeks, I took a sleeping bag and a pillow into the office with me. And they said, what's that for? And I said, I'm not leaving. And they said, it's okay. You don't need to. We want to offer you a job. And that was my first gig 20 years ago.
I love that. So your story, from what I can tell, that is kind of the common thread, because you reached out your hand. I think you met, was it a mentor of yours, David Germain?
Yes.
At the very beginning, because you walked up to him and said, hey, I'd like to do what you do. And he kind of reached out his hand, gave you his information, correct? And
absolutely. Yeah.
It's interesting. You've chased everything. You've got an opportunity, but you've been prepared your entire life for this. You never gave up.
No, that's true. But it's funny because it's never really felt real. It's always felt like a dream because you get to do this job that you love. And it's an oft used phrase, but they say, if you get to do a job you love, you never truly work a day of your life. And I think there is an element of truth to that, but you also have to work at it. You can't just rely on your enthusiasm or your passion for something. You have to work at it, because otherwise you get overtaken and you become lazy, and that's really detrimental. So you have to work at it all the time, but it is an incredibly, I do consider myself massively fortunate to do something that I love so much.
Well, I think it's very interesting. So, they say to become an expert at something, do 10,000 hours. You've done well over 10,000 hours of work on this.
Yes.
But, from what I can tell, you completely engulfed yourself in Formula One, in racing. So you know the ins and outs of the drivers, the drivers personally, the teams personally. How does that affect your reporting? Does it affect your reporting? Let's say when you're doing, when you were a commentator, does that affect your reporting? Can you separate it, or does it help you be a little bit more colorful because you've got more insights on the mood of the day or what have you?
I've been through different job roles in my career, some of which maybe got me too close. I spent 3 years running the press office for GP2, which is the old name for Formula 2, so the category just beneath Formula 1. And it prepares the drivers for for their life in Formula 1. So I was there while Lewis Hamilton was a kid and coming through the ranks and learning his trade, if you like. And I got to know these guys really well. And when I left and came back to journalism, they asked me to do commentary on the championship. But because I spent all these years with these guys, really getting to know them and having to promote them and PR them, I knew them all inside out. So when I was commentating on them, I found it really difficult to not be personal about it. And a lot of people really liked that. And it actually led to me getting my first proper job on television with the Speed Channel in the States.
There you go.
Because they heard my channel, they heard my commentary, and they said, we love it. It's irreverent, but it's always backed up with truth and knowledge because you know these guys. Some people hated it, but the guys at Speed Channel loved it. And I think I was very touched at the start that you said that I think you said you thought I was quite authentic in what I do, and that's what I've always tried to bring, is that authenticity. I can only ever be me. And similarly with the commentary that I started to do, I never had any training in that either. I just was given a microphone and told, go, talk, and so I did. And again, because of that, because I had no training, no background, it was a bit rough around the edges, and I learned on the job. Some people liked it, other people hated it. But I guess so long as you're creating a reaction and emotions, be they positive or negative, at least you're stirring an emotion of some kind.
That's right. So a long time ago, I think you said, I love this saying. You said when you first saw the Formula One in person,
Yeah.
it felt like it was someone taking the tiger out for a ride. Do you still feel that way? Are you numb?
That's a really good question. I don't, but that's not because I've lost the passion and the excitement and the joy of what I do. I always promised myself that the day I walked into the Formula One paddock and no longer felt that rush of joy and adrenaline, and that I was getting to do something special, I would walk away and never go back, because there would be somebody more deserving. Not saying that there aren't more deserving, there are about thousands, probably millions more deserving than me, but somebody who would embrace that opportunity and do more with it than me. I never wanted to become one of those people who started to resent what I was doing, or who became entirely sort of negative towards it. I always wanted to have the joy and the passion. What I mean is, when I was growing up, the cars were smaller and they were very nimble, and you could see the driver working inside the car, and the sound of them, they shrieked, and the cars looked and sounded terrifying. And so the thought that there was this human inside this really scary mechanical beast controlling it is what created the heroicism for me. Now, I still believe that drivers are inherently heroic and brave, but the cars have become so big and almost sort of lumber their way around, Formula One cars certainly, the track, that you lose that real feeling of danger and excitement, and that they are controlling the uncontrollable, because the cars now are so good. They look like they're on rails, and they could almost turn them with their fingertips. The fact that the drivers are going through sort of more extreme G-forces and that the physical extremities of what it takes to be a Formula One driver now are far in advance of what they were in those days when the cars looked more scary, is perhaps lost through the medium of television. But in terms of that raw, oh my God, this is scary, it's not quite where it was. And a lot of that is, oddly, because the broadcast itself has become so much better, the cameras have become more stable, you lose the shakiness of it, which put you into something terrifying. The sound was terrifying. Everything was raw, but the finesse that has sort of coated the sport as we've got sort of more technologically advanced has almost taken some of that thrill away. It's ironic, but sad.
Yeah, it's tied up. Well, it's been great. So let's go forward to the Netflix series, because that is where I really got sucked in. I had been to a few Formula One races before, but I didn't understand. I didn't have a connection with the drivers and the teams and the stress that was behind some of the owners and everything. Once I saw that, I was completely hooked. So what's your feeling about that? What do people tell you about the series and how that's kind of drawn them in?
What's wonderful about the Netflix series are, and I'm not just saying this, I get so many messages every month from folks who either have never watched Formula One in their lives and say, I've come to Formula One purely because of Netflix.
Right.
And then there are those who say, you know what, I used to love Formula One, I fell out of love with it, and then I watched Netflix and it brought me straight back in. And that's great. The diehard fans of the sport look at the Netflix series a little bit and say, wow, there's a bit of poetic license taken and a bit of editorial license taken because they were talking about this race in Belgium and then they used a couple of frames and they were in Italy. And it's like, come on, they're painting a picture here. There is a little bit of poetic license in it, but it's all helping to create this story that does exist,
right,
and helping to draw in new fans. And I think it's been so strong and so successful in that. And it's great because, as I said, the whole thing when I was a kid was, my mates didn't watch Formula One. They didn't like Formula One. I was the only one. So to see this series go global and pull in people who have never watched a lap in their life, I think is fantastic, because it opens up this very vibrant sport. And as you said, the personal stories that exist behind the visor, the human beings that get into those cars to do those incredible things, to open them up to the world and to say, it's not the same as getting in your car and driving to the supermarket. These racing drivers they're superstars, and they're some of the most elite, incredible athletes in the world. There's something very special.
That's right. Well, so you run all around the track before the race, before race day. Do you have a favorite part of that, let's say 3-4 day series when you're interviewing people? What's the most exciting for you? What do you look forward to in every city once you set up?
Oh, great question. I like being able to take time to sit and talk to the drivers. So that usually happens out of season, or maybe on our media day. You have a media day every weekend on the Thursday. And if you get more than 5 minutes, if you get time to actually sit down for 20 minutes, and that's a lot for a racing driver. If you get 20 minutes with a driver that you can actually talk about something that's not racing,
right,
I like that. And the drivers like it too, because they're tired of answering the same questions about, what are your expectations for the weekend? What do you think the tires are going to do? Last weekend, this happened, and blah, blah, blah. Like, they've answered it a million times. So if you can take them somewhere else and ask them about something different, that's great. Last year, some of the most interesting stuff I talked to Lewis about was his activism and what he was doing with the Black Lives Matter movement. It was his music career and the fact that he turned up on a Christina Aguilera track, and it was, just completely crazy. And then there was one where he posted this Instagram photograph, and it was just him sitting at his dining table in his home, completely alone.
Mm-hmm.
And I sort of asked him, how lockdown had affected him and the COVID restrictions and just being at home. And he really opened up about his mental fragility and how much it had really affected him and how he was struggling. And it turned into this really great message about how we're all fragile. Even our heroes that we look up to are fragile. And for him to be that open and honest was wonderful, because it was telling the folks at home it's okay for them to be like that as well. If Lewis Hamilton, potentially the greatest racer of all time,
Right.
can feel the same things that you do, it makes you feel more acceptance that this is normal and this is real. So it's lovely sometimes to just break away from talking about cars and tires and talk about the real world, and that's great.
Right. Get the human aspect in there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Do you have a favorite race? I'm sure there's many, but is there a favorite race? Maybe not because of a win, but something emotional that just you carry with you?
I thought you were going to ask if I had a favorite racing driver then, and I was going to be like, I can't say that.
No, I would never ask. But I want to. I would never ask.
Yeah. I, in terms of excitement, I think the race where Lewis won his first world championship was something unbelievable, because he was way down the order and it was raining and it looked like it was completely lost and he was never going to do it. And if he didn't win it, it was okay, because the guy that was going to win it was Felipe Massa, the Brazilian Ferrari driver, who was just one of the most lovable drivers in the whole world. And we were at the Brazilian Grand Prix.
Right.
So if Massa wins this race and Hamilton finishes 6th or lower, then Massa wins the championship. And you think there's no way Lewis is going to finish 6th or lower. And yet here we are with about 10 laps to go and Hamilton's down in 10th, and there's no way, and it's raining and it's impossible. And then the rain stops and he starts to pick his way through, and he's on dry tires and other people are on wet tires. And so their tires are overheating, and it was like, oh my God. And then he picks off the 9th place guy in the 8th, and then it's the last lap and he's 6th. And you're like, Massa's world champion. Massa crosses the line. Half the media center who wanted Massa to win jump out of their chairs and are celebrating. All the Brazilian journalists are going nuts. And the Brazilian crowds in Sao Paulo, which, as you know, is this
so fun.
Oh, it's a kettle. It is just this boiling atmosphere of passion and intensity. And then the last corner of the last lap, there's a guy on tires that are completely wrong for the conditions. And Hamilton slides up the inside of him, takes the position, crosses the line in 5th, which was the minimum he needed to do to win the world championship. And he wins it by a point on the last corner of the last lap. And then suddenly that half of the media center drops. The other half of the media center jumps out of their seat. It was insane. Like complete, it's the Hail Mary quarterback pass. Yep. From 10 yards out of his own end zone. He throws a Hail Mary. The clock's counted down, right? There's nothing. And somehow someone catches it with the most outstretched fingers you've ever seen, almost loses their balance, but doesn't, holds it, runs it in, and wins the Super Bowl. Like, that was what it was. It was incredible. Just brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And I get goosebumps thinking about it.
It's too bad you don't like what you do. It's like you were there yesterday. That is embedded in your brain. I love that. Well, I'm a big fan of Lewis Hamilton. I love his style. I love everything. I love that he's a winner, came from behind. I've seen his story and I love it.
Yeah.
So many drivers, though, have great stories, and F1 and other things have really, the Netflix show, the Drive to Survive, have really highlighted that. Personalities. I have to say that Daniel Ricciardo is oozing with personality. He's always smiling and he's always laughing. Is he like that off the track?
So this is really interesting. So I was talking about the interviews that I've done that I really enjoy being not necessarily the ones that you'd think, and taking them away from what we normally talk about. I interviewed Daniel about this time last year, actually, in Paris. Around the time that Renault launched their new car. And I had 20, 25, 30 minutes with Daniel, and we sat down and I just talked to him about life. And I said, I can't believe that this smile is permanent. There has to be a guy behind this that doesn't smile all the time. Is the smile really you? And he was just like, no, look, yes, obviously I'm a happy guy, but I'm not always smiling, and I am serious. And there are two sides of me, and there's a side of me that I don't show, and that I can't show. And I think for a lot of them, they almost kind of put on a mask that hides the reality of who they are. to protect themselves in a way. Daniel is a really likable guy, and he's really fun, and he's really silly, but he pulls that mask on and the smile disappears as the visor and the helmet comes
Right.
down. He becomes this very intense competitor. And there's also a very real human underneath that as well, that feels and hurts. And we had a great interview, a really great chat about that. It's not a complete falsity, but it does, that smile and the goofy exterior allows him to hide a lot of the other stuff that's going on with him, so that his rivals can't take advantage of that, or whatever it might be. It's fascinating.
That's right. Okay, well, I want to shift gears just a little bit. I want to talk more about you. The drivers are fantastic, but let's talk about you and your career. So now that you've had great mentors, and of course you've had this 20-year history of really hustling and gotten great opportunities, and you've said yes. Is there ever a time when you said no, by the way?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
When I ran the press department at GP2, they were starting a new Asian championship to promote drivers coming from the Asian continent, to try and give them a chance to race in Europe. And it was going to be about twice as much work, and the money was going to be about the same. And I had just got married to my first wife, and I said, no, I can't do this. I can't double the amount of work I'm going to do for the same money while I'm starting a family. It's not on. I got to think about me
right.
here. And that was tough, actually, because I left and I didn't have anything, but it's what actually led to me going back into journalism, and then ultimately getting the job doing the commentary on GP2 and everything that led everywhere. I took the decision knowing that I wanted to move back to journalism, but I also took it out of saying no. I had the job, but I said, no, I'm not going to do this. You can find someone else to do that if you can, because that's not for me. And then you have to say no every now and again. You have to reach a point where you know your own worth, and motorsport is terrible for giving you a low appreciation of yourself and a low value, because everybody is constantly told, well, if you don't do it, we'll find someone cheaper. We'll find the next person. We'll find someone younger. We'll find someone cheaper. And so for your whole life, you run yourself into the ground, because you're filled with fear that they will find somebody cheaper, younger, more willing to do the things that you won't. And I'm 40 in 2 weeks, and I have reached a point in my career now where I think I know my own worth and I know my own value. And if somebody turns around and says, we'll find somebody else, I'll say, great, good luck. That's absolutely fine. And we'll part on good terms. I know my value. I know what I'm worth. I've done 20 years in this game. And I think that deserves a certain level of, where I think I should be. If you don't agree with that, that's absolutely fine. And that's totally cool. But you get me, you get what you get. You want something else, go for something else. And I'm not going to pander to being less than I think I deserve. But I think that comes with, for all of us in life, I think that comes with maturity and with an acceptance of self. What you're constantly trying to figure yourself out through your 20s and your 30s. And there comes a point at which you do accept that you are enough as you are. And that's as true personally as it is in business, I think. And it's not being rude to people and saying, well, screw you, I'm great. That's not it. And it's not about arrogance. It's about an acceptance and a happiness with yourself and who you are. And I think that comes a lot from the people that you surround yourselves with. You talk about mentors. Mentors, I think, are so important in life and come into your life when you most need them and when you probably least expect them to. And I've been really lucky with the mentors that I've had. I have a guy at the moment who is my cameraman and is a dear friend. And the more I thought about our relationship, and the more I thought about how he calms me and how he, pardon me, how he reinforces my my self-belief and my feeling of self-worth, the more I realized that he's way more than a friend, and he is a mentor, and he is somebody who inspires me and drives me and pulls me forward. And he's one of the most important people in my life, because of that. For the same reason, my daughter is almost, she could fulfill that role as being a mentor, because she's someone who makes me desire to be better and to do more and to improve myself and to look at the parts of myself that need improving, whilst also loving the parts of me that I don't see that are likable, and she sees them. And yeah, it's these people that you surround yourself with can be so important, and they're all mentors in their own way.
I love that, because you wouldn't necessarily think, okay, you're cameraman, but your cameraman does see you with your mask on and your mask off, so to speak.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely. And he looks through the lens, and he's looking at you all the time.
Mhm.
And there'll be times where I'm doing something to camera, and he'll just drop the camera, and he'll just like, "You all right?" And I'm like, "No." And he's just like, "Should we get coffee?" And I'm like, "Yeah." Because he knows. And you spend so much time together, and he just knows. But it's the same. Like, your kids know when you're not quite right.
Oh yeah.
The people that you spend the most time with, and the people who get you, the people who know you, the people who. And I'm going to go off on a tangent, but it's a funny thing about social media as well. You can get so worked up with people saying negative things about you on social media. And I saw a really nice comment the other day, which was, if somebody came up to you in the street and told you they didn't like you, you wouldn't care because they don't know you.
Right.
You only need to worry about the opinions of people that know you and people that you spend your time with. And, to surround yourself with the people that bring the good things into your life is really, really important. But it is interesting that with social media, I could get 100 positive comments and one negative one, and the one I'll think about all day is the one negative one. So you need those people around you who bring you positivity.
That's right. Do you read a lot of comments? Do you participate in those comments anymore?
Do you know what? It's rule one: don't read the comments. And yeah, I do. Of course we do. Everyone does. Anyone who says they don't is a liar. Everyone reads the comments. I've just started sort of pushing my YouTube channel in lockdown, and
which I love, by the way.
Thank you, but I read all the comments. I read them all. It's terrible, but it's great because at the moment they're all positive. But it's when and I'm trying to answer loads of questions by doing other videos that then answer the questions. But I swear there's going to come some awful ones. But I think Twitter. I've started spending more time on YouTube and Instagram because there's a lot of, I think, more care and time put into not just commenting, but in the content as well. Instagram, you're either putting up something that you care about enough to have taken a photograph of, or it's something that's personal to you. So there's more meaning to it. And so because of that, people, I think, react in a more positive and sort of... just a more positive way.
Right.
Whereas Twitter is such a throwaway, here's 240 characters or 280 or however many it is. Let's just, let's write it, boom, and then it's gone. And people do kind of tend to hide behind their veil of anonymity and say horrible things. It's too easy for people to do that. And you find yourself switching into that mode too quickly, being too quick to react, too quick to say, so somebody says something and you could really easily turn back and go, well, piss off. I don't, whatever. But you shouldn't, you really shouldn't. You've got to, I dislike Twitter enormously. I'm on there because it's a news source. And I find that the points at which I get into the most trouble or I say something I shouldn't is when I get pulled into an argument that I needn't. And it's still learning every day.
I say Twitter has ruined many careers with a few characters. Someone didn't think before they put it out there, and everyone makes comments to their friends and whatnot, but if you put it out there for some reason, it's just magnified and it can go wrong so quickly.
Absolutely
it can. So you're having fun with the YouTube channel. I actually enjoy the walks in the countryside and thinking, Will, you could do a side hustle of just being zen in your walks right now for everybody that can't get out of their house. Think about that.
I don't want people to be jealous of you know, we're so lucky. We moved here a couple of years ago. We're in folks that haven't seen the channel, I'm sort of in the middle of the English countryside, just north of Oxford.
It's gorgeous.
It's beautiful. It's really, really beautiful, but it's in the heart of where all of the racing teams are based. My other half works for the Aston Martin F1 team. So that's about 20 minutes down the road from us. The Alpine F1 team are about 15 minutes in the other direction. We're not far from Milton Keynes, where Red Bull are based. Williams are about 20 minutes in the other way. McLaren are quite a way away. Mercedes are like 15 minutes away. My other half has to pass Mercedes to get to Aston Martin. So everyone is kind of in this little area, and it's really lovely. But yes, our sort of new little development of houses was built right on the side of a lovely sort of forested area. So our government allotted 1 hour of exercise time a day. We can go for a lovely run or a walk through there. We're very, very, like, really, really lucky. It's actually on an old US airbase that they built it on. So we're up really high. So it's lovely.
Nice. Oh, it's lovely. It's lovely. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about travel. So when you were traveling, and yes, hopefully we'll resume very soon, who knows when you were traveling, how do you balance family, work, life, downtime? I mean, don't you travel 25 weeks a year in a normal circuit, or maybe you travel more?
More. It's so you kind of have January off. February, you're traveling to the team launches and doing testing, and then March, probably the second week, the season starts. And runs through till the end of November or first couple of weeks of December. And then other than that, you only have 3 weeks off in August.
That's it.
That's it. Otherwise, you're traveling most of the time. There are back-to-back races, so 2 weekends in a row. Even if you just have an individual race, you'll fly out on the Tuesday or Wednesday and then fly back the Monday afterwards. So you're away, you know, for a good week, good 7 days, 6-7 days each time. And 1 weekend at home, then away. Sometimes there are triple headers, so 3 weeks in a row. It's hard. It's really hard. And I'm divorced, so my daughter has always known, you know, this kind of way, and we just make the most of the opportunities that we have to see each other. We have a great relationship, and she's amazing. She's so great. But it's, you know, I do, and I think COVID, and we were talking about this a little bit before we started recording, I think that the last 12 months have given everybody, whether you travel, whether you work at, you know, close to your home, whatever it might be, I think it's given us all time and reason to think about what we do, and if we're happy, and if we're truly living our lives as we want to live them. How we elicit change, should we determine that change is required, I don't know. Right. If anyone can tell me, please let me know. But it's difficult, but I think it has given everybody time to ask, is this me? Is this what I want? And I was talking to my auntie yesterday. She's 90. And bless her, she's stuck in her apartment in London, can't really leave and go for a walk every day. It's miserable. And you know, she said, when are you going traveling again? And I said, you know what? I don't know how much I want to. Not because I don't love my job, but just I look back over 20 years and I think how many birthdays and friends' weddings and, you know, weekends I could have spent with my daughter that I've missed, and or to do a job, which obviously you need a job to pay for your life. You know, it's vocation, not vacation.
Right.
But yeah, where is my focus? Has it been in the wrong place? Should I be spending more time at home? It's a big question. And I think it's something that all of us are thinking about right now as to, well, where do we want to go? You know, when this thing is over and life hopefully gets back to some semblance of normality, do I want to carry on in the same vein that I have been for 15, 20 years? Or do I want to see some change? And then how do I go about making that happen? It's a big time for everyone, I think.
We're we're all thinking about that. So, change is inevitable, but progress is I think progress is what makes me happy, what makes a lot of people happy, just know you're moving forward. You don't have to light the world on fire, but just following your heart. You still have the same passion for racing that you did when you were young?
I love it. As I said, if I didn't still love it, if I didn't still get that fire in my belly every time I entered the paddock, and then I would hand the baton on and I would go and do something else. I still love it. I miss being a fan a bit. I'd love to go to a Formula One race and just sit in the grandstand and have a beer and a hot dog and just watch it. I kind of missed that. But it's funny. I actually got COVID last year, so I spent 2 races at home watching the TV.
How was that? I mean, how was that on the health side, and how was that for you watching? That's like asking the quarterback to be sidelined for a couple of games and watch his team. What was that like for you? Were you just angsty, or tell me?
So the first weekend I watched everything, and I was constantly sending messages to everybody and emails about, blah, blah, blah. Have you thought about this and this, and interview with this person and ask these questions. And then for the post-race show, have you thought about positioning it and talking? And in the end, my producer, he just texted me and he goes, Will, just enough. Okay. We're okay. Appreciate it. But dude, seriously, you gotta rest and get better and just calm. I was like, okay. So for the second week, I didn't watch a single practice session. I went to the supermarket on purpose. Well, actually, there was I slept in over one of them, and then I was like, well, I didn't miss anything. I won't watch the next one. And then on the Saturday, I missed qualifying because I was at the supermarket, and then I watched the highlights show that night that Channel 4, one of the networks here in the UK, do. And I loved it because I'd never actually seen their highlights packages, because I'm always at the race. So I'd never seen what they do. So I got to sort of watch it, and I was like, yeah. And so then I sort of messaged all the guys on Channel 4. I was just like, you guys are great. This is fantastic. I've never seen it. It's brilliant. So that was really good. And I got to kind of do that. But that was really interesting, and it was nice. Actually, it was really nice. And then on the Sunday, I went took a long walk with my fiance, and we went to our local pub, and we sat in the beer garden, and we had our Sunday roast beef and Yorkshire puddings and everything, and gravy. And on our mobile phone had the race on the phone, propped up against a bottle of wine at the end of the table, and just sat there. And I had a couple of pints of beer, and she had a couple of glasses of red wine, and we just watched the race on a mobile phone, and it was great. It was brilliant. I would do that every week. So it was lovely. It was great. COVID was not lovely. It was horrible. It properly kicked me in the pants. I was really bad with it, actually. Not like hospital bad, but just drained me. Zapped me to about 10% of my normal energy levels, and my entire body ached. I was having to stop every sort of 2 or 3 steps up my staircase to go to bed. It completely slayed me. And actually, for the first couple of races that I came back, I was, by about 4 o'clock each day, I was just dead. I had no energy left. And it took genuinely until end of November, start of December, and I got it in October. It took to November, December for me to feel okay enough to think about going for a run again or doing something like that. Feel good now, but at the time it was rotten. Meanwhile, my producer caught it as well. No symptoms. Absolutely fine. It just seems like such a lottery as to who gets it and how they get it and how bad they get it. And it's a horrible thing.
That's right. Well, I'm very glad that you're better, and thank you for sharing that story. When this first all happened, part of my crew was in Melbourne, and they were waiting for the race. And everybody was asking, and they went to some of the pre-parties, and on practice day, and then everything kind of got shut down. Did they continue to race after the public left, or did everybody shut down and left after that?
Everyone went home. I think Wednesday Was it Wednesday or Thursday? Oh, it doesn't matter. Either way, the first day kind of happened. There was no running on track. It was just everyone sort of milling around in the paddock. And then once it became clear that a couple of members of the McLaren team had come down with COVID and then would have to quarantine, everything essentially went into this massive lockdown. And that night, I know Sebastian Vettel, I think, was the first of the drivers on a plane out of there, like literally straight away. Even if the race weekend had gone ahead, it would have gone ahead without Seb. Like he was just like, I'm out. I think McLaren said that they were pulling out of the weekend. And as soon as that happened, everyone started to make their way home. Like it was done. It was over at that point. So yeah, it was a very odd situation. Very, very strange. I'd actually booked myself in with a brilliant tattoo artist from Melbourne who I'd wanted to go and see for ages. And she doesn't have much time on her books, but I said, I'm never in Melbourne and blah, blah, blah. And and she said, oh yeah, on this day you go. So I went and went under her needle for the sort of, it was about 6 or 7 hours. It was really great. Anyway, and then we flew home the next day because the race had all been cancelled. So essentially I flew to Melbourne for a tattoo and then flew home.
Got something out of it. So and are you pleased with the tattoo?
It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. Yes, I'm very, very happy. So, yeah, but that, some people say, I went all the way to Melbourne for a day and all I got was this lousy t-shirt. I got a tattoo. I got a tattoo. That was, it's crazy.
Well, what would you say to someone who's been listening to you chat and talking a little bit about your story? What would you say saying maybe they're, 17, 18, 20, I love Will. He's my idol. I'd like to do what he does, but everything's changed in the market. When you were first starting, they didn't have, the digital influencers, they didn't have the presenters, so on and so forth. Any advice you'd like to give?
I'm actually quite envious of kids growing up today who want to get their voice out there, because there are so many platforms that exist today that never existed when I was coming through the ranks and when I was starting out. Blogs didn't exist. I remember my first year as a freelance journalist, I used to have one of those old cards with the aerial on them that you plugged into the side of your computer. For anybody young enough not to know, they were sort of the size of a credit card, but about half a centimeter thick, metal, and then they'd have this tiny little aerial on the side that you plugged in, and there was a dial-up, so you could actually connect to the mobile phone network and then send an article. And I mean, that was when email addresses were numbers. So right. I think one of my colleagues in the sport still has a CompuServe email address, which is like 90764318296 BQA at CompuServe. It's brilliant. Anyway, I'm going massively off topic. They have such a wealth of opportunity to put their voice out there. I'm just starting my YouTube channel now, and I see all of these established YouTubers who have millions of views and millions of subscribers, and they are doing great work from their own homes. A lot of them have never attended a race, but that is how you go to a broadcaster, to a potential employer, and say, hey, this is me. I spent years trying to write the perfect CV, a 2-page, foolscap, like, this is what I've done and this is where I've been and this is who I've worked for. Now you send them the sizzle reel of what you've done, what your YouTube channel is about. And there is a physical, manifestation of who you are, audio, visual, bang, that's me. Through Instagram, through YouTube, through social, you are constantly there. And you are creating your voice. You are learning your voice. And that, I think, is the most important thing. The most important thing that I've learned, and the most important advice I can give to anybody who wants to broadcast, wants to write, wants to inspire, is never to try to be anyone but yourself. I've always written as I speak, because I would hope that when someone reads my articles, they hear my voice.
Right.
I've always been who I am on screen because I can only be me. I can't try to be somebody else. And the times that I have tried to be what I thought a network might want, it just is horrible. You've got to be yourself, because it sounds silly and, it's said a lot, but there's only one of you. The only person you can be is you, because you're the only person that is you. So that is the most important thing of all, is to find your voice, find what you love, find what you want to talk about, what you want to share with people, and talk about it in the way that you talk about it. Express yourself in the way that you express yourself. And then no one else will be able to do what you do, because you're being you. And that's it. And as you said, be authentic, be true to who you are, be true to what you love, and you'll be unique, and there'll be nobody like you.
Perfect. Well, this has been a joy, but I can't let you go until I ask you 2 more questions. We can be
okay.
When is season 3 coming out? Is there a season 3?
So there is a season 3 of Drive to Survive. I actually just did a YouTube video about it. And it will be coming out, I think, end of Feb, start of March. So as we go through preseason testing, ramping up to the start of the year, it's going to be great. The crews were on site for every race. Even with the COVID restrictions, they were immersed into the teams as well. They actually had to travel with the teams, stay with the teams, eat, live, breathe with. They became part of the teams, even wearing the team kit, so that they would abide properly by all of the COVID restrictions that were in place. So in many ways, probably even more immersed into the teams than they ever have been before. So I wish I knew what was in the series. I don't. All I do is I do the interviews for them, and they put it together however they want at the end of the year, usually getting me in trouble along the way. And I can't wait. I can't wait to see it as well. I'm so excited.
I'm excited too. All right. Any news on when the season will start? I hear rumblings, but will it start on time, or it's just fluid?
So at the moment, we are scheduled to be in Bahrain for preseason testing, March 12th to 14th. And then the season itself, I believe, will get underway on the 28th of the month, again in Bahrain. So that is when the season is due to start. There has been a full calendar released, but I think we'd probably be naive to think that every single race is going to happen as scheduled. We just got to see how this thing goes. How the vaccine is rolled out, and hopefully as soon as possible we can get back to some semblance of normality and go and give our loved ones a hug.
That's right. Well, I hope to see you out there at some point this year on the circuit at a race. But thank
that'd be great.
you so much for your time, Will. I wish you all the best, and stay healthy and happy, and we'll connect soon out there on the race circuit.
Absolutely. Stay safe, stay sane. Absolutely lovely to talk to you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.